Governor Malloy, thanks for joining me today. It's been nearly a year since the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown. Could you tell us a little bit about how your state handled that tragedy and how it's doing in the year since?
Well, you know, in the time that has transpired since the shooting, Connecticut has done a lot of things. Time was set aside to remember those who were lost, to support the families, but also time was spent in passing important legislation in the state. I think in some ways that we're all anxious for the first anniversary to come and go, to get through it. And I think ultimately the families continue to be in everyone's prayers in the state.
On those, the newer policies that came about with ammunition certification, what's first in the country as a violent gun offender registry in the state, what types of processes have you put in place to make sure that these brand new policies within the state are going to roll out effectively?
Yeah, no, it took a fair amount of work. What I said we would do is we'd be up and running by August 1st. We were actually up and running by July 1st, so we actually met our schedule very well. It's requiring a lot of work. I mean, we're processing a lot of applications, a lot of paper, a lot of new registrations, and that has put some pressure on the state police operation. But I think we've risen to the occasion. I think there were initially some concerns whether we would be able to operate in a timely fashion, and we staffed up a little bit, but we also improved procedures. Processing is not taking a terribly long period of time. People are complaining that they have to do it, but it's not a big time constraint.
Can you talk a little bit about what your administration has done to make sure that the many agencies across the state that have to deal with these laws are communicating effectively, coordinating effectively, and working together to make these work?
What is interesting about this situation on the issue of communication in particular is we are building new infrastructure and had been building new infrastructure before Sandy Hook took place to make sure that all of our law enforcement personnel could communicate, that they could have instant access to information. The judicial system, the state police, local police, and would have access to important information about individuals, and this ups the game a little bit more because what we're going to allow a police officer who's responding to a domestic dispute to understand is what guns are registered in that house.
Sure.
One of the most dangerous things for a police officer to do in America is to respond to a domestic abuse complaint, an active domestic abuse complaint. We think having that police officer have the information about registered guns in the house makes a lot of sense and makes officers safer, and I can assure you that they appreciate that.
Can you talk a little bit about what metrics you've used to make sure that law-abiding gun owners are able to do what they want, to have the guns that they want?
Yeah, we believe that we have an obligation to process all of the information within a month, and if we can get that down further, we will. I think at the outset we were a little behind, but we're now solidly in that. With respect to background checks themselves, as you know, they can be done much more rapidly than that. But we did experience a backlog as people rushed to properly register their large capacity magazines or the guns that they had in their house. If we can do it more rapidly, we will. There's no reason to delay, and there's no desire to delay. It really is a matter of processing.
Within your administration, have you set up any performance metrics, administrative reviews, or other measures to see how well government is working to implement these laws and to ultimately get the job done?
We are in the process in Connecticut of an ongoing lean analysis of all of our processes involving the public. That lean analysis will be applied on an ongoing basis, not once, but on an ongoing basis, to all of the processes with respect to how we handle our new laws, our existing laws, with respect to gun and permitting of guns and background checks and that sort of thing. And by the way, how do we lower costs? How do we give a more timely answer? I'm very fond of saying in my administration we have to get to yes or no rapidly because both cost a lot of money for consumers. And so what I have tried to infuse in Connecticut is the need to constantly be questioning ourselves with respect to our performance of services to and for the public.
Are there other reforms that you'd like to see the state of Connecticut pass in any of the areas, gun safety, school safety, mental health care?
I think that we've bitten off a lot, and I think implementation is going to be very important. I think we did much of what we were doing at the time in the hopes that Congress would move in the right direction, at least would close the loopholes. I think we have to take that long-term approach to regaining our safety in the United States. And I think the right way to do it, I think on a national level, is pretty limited. And then it will be left up to states to go further. And clearly Connecticut's one of those leaders.